is harder than that one. Because I know the importance of being a dad to my daughters, and they need me. And I encourage dads today to live out the commitment that you have made to your wife and the commitment you've made to your children. With that, I yield back.
Great, great words. Thank you, James. What a word of encouragement on how to commit and to keep on going and to be good dads and the need to strengthen marriage in this country. So thank you for those very, very excellent comments. And now I'd like to call on another colleague from Oklahoma, a freshman this year who's just hit the ground running, and we're really glad he's here. And it's Jim Bridenstine. And so I'd like to yield to you and hear what you would like to share tonight about the importance of fathers.
Well, I really appreciate that. It's an honor to be here, and thank you for inviting me to participate in this. I have been certainly accused of maybe being critical of the President from time to time, as many of us Republicans are sometimes. But I'd like to share a few points where we agree, the President and I. I've got a number of quotes here, and I think these quotes cross party lines and certainly indicate how important fathers are in the lives of their children. Here's a quote from our President Barack Obama. "We need fathers to realize that responsibility doesn't end at conception. We need them to realize that what makes you a man is not the ability to have a child, it's the courage to raise one." Here's another quote from our President. "I wish I had a father who was around and involved." That's a profound statement. And certainly it shows a great deal of courage by our President to say that. I remember when I was a young child in the Cub Scouts, the Pinewood Derby came around every year. And my father and I and my brother, we would spend a great deal of time weighing our little Pinewood Derby car to make sure that it weighed precisely 5 ounces. And we would spend all night graphiting the wheels because we wanted our little Pinewood Derby car to be the absolute fastest car that we could possibly make it. Whether we won or lost, it didn't matter. We were going to make this car as fast as we could possibly make it. And I also remember, not too long ago, my 7-year-old, who was then 6, wanted to participate in the Pinewood Derby as a Cub Scout himself. And because of that relationship I had with my father and the time that we spent involved in that project, it was a desire of my heart to be involved in his Pinewood Derby to the same extent. And I'm proud to say that when I was a child, we won the Pinewood Derby, and I'm proud to say that as Walker's dad, together we won the Pinewood Derby when he was 6 years old. And these are the things that I think are critically important in the life of a child. Some other quotes from our President. Obama has said that his hardest, but not always the most rewarding job is being a father. Or, I'm sorry, the hardest but the most rewarding is being a father, and I think that's absolutely true as well. I want to quote some statistics here. Currently, there are 24 million children in America living in a home without their biological father. The World Family Map report by Child Trends found that even when controlling for income, children who live with both parents have better educational outcomes than children living with one or no parents. Fathers play an important role in teaching children life lessons and preparing them to succeed in school and in life. Some other quotes. According to the National Fatherhood Initiative, a father's involvement in education of his children is associated with a higher probability of A's for their children. Interestingly, I remember when I was in 4th grade, there was a competition called Math Olympiads. And my dad was a mathematician, and he came from a family of mathematicians, and my dad would spend hours with me working on these math problems that were really college-level math problems, and we would go over and over these problems again and again. And I remember in 4th grade, when it came time to do Math Olympiads, there was just 5 problems. And if you could get 1 or 2 of them right, it was really tremendous for a 4th grader. And I remember at the end of the first Math Olympiad, I had 4 out of 5 correct. And it wasn't because I was smart, it wasn't because I was brilliant, had nothing to do with that at all. In fact, quite the contrary. But what it had to do with was the fact that I had a dad who was so engaged and so involved and so interested in making sure not only that I would get an A in the class, quite frankly, that was really not relevant to him. What he cared about was whether or not I learned the material. And I remember taking tests in 6th grade, and I would do the math problems entirely different than how the teacher taught, and the teacher would count it wrong. And my dad would go to the school and he would say, you know, he may have done it differently than you taught him, but he did it the way we taught at home because he's preparing for, you know, higher math in a different year. And having a dad involved in your education in that way is something that's tremendously important to me as I was growing up, and certainly now that I am a father myself, and I have a child in first, now soon to be 2nd grade, and of course other children on the way that are entering kindergarten and a 1-year-old at home. These are areas where it's important for me, and there's a generational trend. When a child has that impact from their father, certainly it's an impact on them that they want to have on their own children. And so that's why it's so important for fathers to be involved in the lives of their children. That's my personal experience. Children with involved fathers are more likely to do well in school. They have a better sense of well-being. They have fewer behavioral problems. When fathers are actively involved in the upbringing of their children, the children demonstrate greater self-control and a greater ability to take initiative. Along with Father's Day this June, we'll also bring an important announcement. The Supreme Court's much-anticipated ruling on both the Defense of Marriage Act and Proposition 8. These cases have put the national spotlight on this issue in a new way and provide an opportunity for Americans to discuss the question, what is marriage? Marriage exists to bring a man and a woman together as husband and wife, to be a father and a mother to children. And the institution of marriage is intended for life. And this is very important when it comes to the rearing of children. A few more statistics. In 2012, about 1/3 of all children lived in families where without their biological father present. According to some estimates, as many as 50% of children who are currently under age 18 will spend or have spent a significant portion of their childhood in a home without their biological father. Research indicates that children raised in single-parent families are more likely than children raised in two-parent families with both biological parents to do poorly in school, have emotional and behavioral problems, become teenage parents, and have poverty-level incomes. In 2011, the poverty rate for children living in homes without a father was 48%, compared to 11% for children living with married couple families. Single-parent families are more likely to be poor than two-parent families, especially if the lone parent is the mother. That's why it's so important for fathers, and that's why I commend the President when he talks about the importance of fathers. Here's a final quote from our President. As fathers, we need to be involved in our children's lives, not just when it's convenient or easy, and not just when they're doing well, but when it's difficult and thankless, and they're struggling. That's when they need us most. And with that, I thank the gentlelady from Missouri, and I yield back.
Thank you so much, Jim. Really enjoyed hearing the stories about your father and the role that he played, and you know, I think every child in that derby was a winner who had a father who helped make their little pine box with them, and it really is important and makes a huge difference. So thanks for sharing that. Now I'd like to yield my time to Congressman Trent Franks from Arizona, who's certainly a champion for so many of these issues that are so important to us today and to fathers and families. So, Trent, go ahead.
Well, I just thank the gentlelady, Mr. Speaker, because she has demonstrated such a wonderful presence in this body. She's been a gift to all of us, and I know that each person that has preceded me at this platform is grateful for Congresswoman Vicki Hartzler, and wish there were about another 200 like her, and I might just go home. But I really appreciate her so much. Mr. Speaker, it's been said that a father is a man who expects his children to be as good as he meant to be. And I've yet to meet a father who doesn't want to convey his own mistakes to his children. He wants his children to learn from his mistakes, to give his children the best possible start in life. serving as a springboard from which to face the day-to-day challenges that ultimately come. But I really don't think that's such a comprehensive definition. Those of us who are privileged to be in the Christian family believe that there is a loftier image of fatherhood, that there is one after whom we model our inevitably flawed attempts to raise our children with love and wisdom, a perfect father who gives us, quote, every good and perfect gift, who is a father to the fatherless and a help in times of need to the widow and the oppressed. And it is only in having children sometimes that we begin to understand just a little glimpse of how our Heavenly Father feels about the rest of us. To most women, their father was their first love. To most men, their father was their first larger-than-life idol. The role a father plays in the life of his children simply cannot be overstated. That fact, Mr. Speaker, that knowledge that little eyes are watching every move we make, often emulating what they see for good or bad, no matter what we do, we'll never feel quite fully equipped to do justice to the sacred responsibility with which God has entrusted us. There's a famous saying that the greatest gift a father can give his children is to love their mother. And the point of that quote, of course, is that a healthy, intact home gives a child the best possible chance at pursuing and achieving their dreams. But for all its difficulties, what a sweet and blessed honor it is to be entrusted with the task of raising these little human images of unconditional love. And I've said it before, Mr. Speaker, and I believe with every passing day, that every baby that is born comes with a message from God that He has not yet despaired of mankind on earth. Yet I will look around at the state of the American family, Mr. Speaker, that bedrock institution that is responsible more than any other factor for inculcating the truth into the hearts and minds of each new generation, and I believe that it is facing a grave and profound challenge in America. A mentor and a friend of mine, Gary Bauer, recently wrote an article on this very subject. It was highlighting the state of affairs in which so many Americans find themselves without the firm, guiding, loving hand of a father. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, 40% of children are now born to unmarried parents, including a majority of children born to women 30 years old or younger. And a recent study in Richmond, Virginia, found that 60% of families in the city have just one parent, usually the mother at home. Among black residents, it's 86% of homes that are single parent. And a related Pew study estimated that women, when they are the prime breadwinners, and they are in 40% of American households, that unfortunately the majority of these households are led by a single mother who averages just $23,000 in annual income, whereas intact families average about $80,000 a year in income by comparison. 85% of all young men, or even for that matter middle-aged men in prison, came from a family that never had a functional father figure in their midst. 85%. Mr. Speaker, it is an understatement to suggest to you that children are so desperately in need of both a mother and a father. And I know no better way to really illustrate that than just to try to tell the story of three fathers. And the first story I'll tell is of one father named Earl Carr. He was my grandfather. Earl Carr was a coal miner. And when he was just in his mid-20s, a terrible cave-in crushed his friends, killed most of them, and broke his back. And so as a child, I remember growing up when my grandfather could carry a coal bucket for maybe 40 or 50 feet, but then he'd have to sit down. But he never abandoned his family, and he was always there in every way that he could be. And just to illustrate to you how sometimes a grandfather can have a big impact on a grandson, more than 45 years has passed, and I hope I can remember it, but he used to be very fond of the Coal Miner's Ode. And it goes something like this. He said, "Come and listen, you fellers, so young and so fine, and seek not your fortune in the dark dreary mine. It will form as a habit and seep into your soul till the stream of your blood runs as black as the coal. 'Cause it's dark as a dungeon, damp as the dew, where the danger is double and the pleasures are few, where the rain never falls and the sun never shines. It's dark as a dungeon way down in the mines, And I hope when I'm gone and the ages shall roll, my body will blacken and turn into coal. And I'll look from the door of my heavenly home, and I'll pity the miner digging my bones. 'Cause it's dark as a dungeon, damp as the dew, where the danger is double and the pleasures are few. Where the rain never falls and the sun never shines. It's dark as a dungeon way down in the mines. I don't remember the last time I said that, Mr. Speaker, but I do know that it was over 40 years ago that I learned it. And a grandfather does have a lasting impact on our lives. And so now I will tell you the story of another father, and he's my father, a man named Taylor Franks. Now I won't go into, because I don't remember, how he was there for me when I was a baby and had some congenital defects and probably wouldn't have had the opportunity to be standing in this well had it not been for a faithful father. But I'll tell you just one story. Years ago in the little town when I was growing up, I came away from the playground one day when I was about 5 or 6 years old, maybe 6 years old. And I came through an alley, and you know how it always is. There's sometimes a bunch of guys that want to demonstrate their macho capability. And I walked past the fence, and one of them yelled something at me, and there was a rock fight that ensued. Now, they were behind the fence, and there were several of them. And I was out there alone. And I was losing this battle very demonstrably. And I would pick up what rock and throw it back because I didn't want to be discomfited by this band of ruffians, you understand. But I was losing. And I thought, boy, what am I going to do? I'm going to have to run, it looks like. And just at the moment when I was probably in the peak of my panic, all of a sudden the rock stopped. Everything was still. And I could see them peeking over the fence at me. And I noticed a little careful, it seemed like they were looking at something behind me. And I turned, and it was Taylor Franks. He said, how about me evening up the sides here just a little bit? And you know, he evened up the sides many, many times. He's 87 years old now. But I'll tell you, if the communists ever come to this country to take us over, they better go around that old gentleman's house, because they'll get more than they bargained for. This is a man that loves his country, loves his God, and loves his family. And I have no words to express my gratitude to him. And so I will tell you about another father who almost didn't think he was going to be one. But he calls his little boy little feller, because that's what his daddy called him. And his name is Joshua Lane, and he's my boy. He's got a sister, twin sister. She's 5 minutes younger. Of course, he takes care of her. But I can say to you that there is no greater gift on this earth than his children. And somehow, I guess, the point of all this, Mr. Speaker, is just to remind all of us that our fathers, what they meant to us, and what we mean to our children. Now, sometimes I have to watch mine grow up at a distance, but they know their daddy loves them, and they know their daddy is here so that we can make a better future for them. And so that, I guess, my challenge to the fathers of this country is to be reminded that your children grow up so quickly, and your impact on them will be profound beyond any words that I could ever articulate. And they say that great societies finally come when old men plant trees under whose shade they will never sit. And I believe that to be true, that our greatest job as fathers is to make sure that our children have the inculcated truths that will help them find their way home and through the great storms of life. We should always remind ourselves that they are indeed the living messages that we send to a time we will never see ourselves. So I hope that somehow that fathers of this country will recognize the gift that they've been given, and they will recognize the impact that they will have, and that the rest of society will recognize that if we displace fathers in our country, we will bankrupt us all trying to replace them. So I With that, Madam, Mr. Speaker, and Congressman Hochsler, I yield back.
Thank you so much, Representative Franks. Couldn't say it any better, I think. Thank you. And the heritage that he has given his children and that his father gave him and his grandfather gave him, that's what it's about, is being able to pass on that heritage to your children. And that's why we have a policy in our country that encourages fathers to be there for their children, and so that every child has a chance to have a mother and a father. And I'm glad to be joined today by a gentleman from California, Doug LaMalfa. And thank you for coming tonight, and look forward to hearing what you have to share on this very important topic.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and my colleague, Ms. Hartzler. Thank you for holding this time here tonight for us here to talk about the importance of fatherhood and what all that means. And you know, I really appreciate the words of my colleague from Arizona who just spoke and his eloquent way of doing that. And you know, we're in a nation here that really cries out for the type of values that are represented by what is called the nuclear family. You know, kids these days with so many temptations, so many things out there that would pull them all different directions. They need a mom and they need a dad. And we know statistically, just talking numbers, that the chances of success for children to grow up and be successful in their own lives, not in poverty, not in abusive situations, the percentages are so much higher when there's a loving mom and a dad in their life. And so we have very important tasks, very important jobs here in this place. So, Mr. Speaker, when we make policy here, we always need to make it in such a way that supports the family, that strengthens the family, and doesn't weaken it or in some fashion even use the state, use the government as usurping the role of a parent or of a dad, like we've seen so much with maybe the start of the Great Society. You know, well-intentioned things that have gone on to, in many ways, replace the father in people's lives. And there needs to be that accountability to come back and bring that unit together. So, you know, thinking of my own dad, you know, we lost him almost 5 years ago now. And I'm going to get through this without getting verklempt here, man. You know, he was always a strong and pretty quiet leader, but he could just give you the look, pretty much, and set you back on track. And so he had to spend a lot of hours out on the farm, you know. We didn't always get to see him all the time when it was busy in the springtime with planting or with harvest, you know, but we always knew, me and my sisters, that he was there for us. He didn't get to every ball game, but we always knew. We never had to question his dedication and commitment to us and to our mother. Because moms are in it too. We know that, certainly. As, you know, typically, mostly the caregiver for kids, a lot of times. She needs that support too, that comes from that committed family unit. So we have to make policy, we have to make things that support that in this place. And I'm so just disappointed with the direction our country's gone the last 40, 50 years that has broken that apart. I have an obligation too. My wife and my 4 kids. And one of the most difficult things in contemplating what goes on with this role of service that I've been blessed with by the voters of my district is the time away from home. Being from the West Coast, it's a heck of a commitment. You know, 5-hour plane ride each way and all that. You don't just get to pop in like when I was in the state legislature in Sacramento. You get home most nights. So that's the thing that kind of keeps me wondering sometimes, worrying a little bit. Am I doing right by my kids? We do this here. I think any one of us that runs for office, ostensibly with the idea that we're trying to help the next generations and preserve the country, preserve our freedoms. But there's a sacrifice in this job. So, but it kind of all comes back to perspective here. Father's Day the other day. Got to spend at home with the family, and all my kids either got me a little something or made a little card, and very, very touching things that were said in those cards that makes me reminded that, yeah, we are here trying to do something for them, preserve their rights, their opportunities, their liberties, and that they understand, even though I'm not always get to be home, that it is for them. And so that makes me feel good about doing this, about taking on the huge issues here, the long hours, the sometimes fruitless battles, and people looking at us from the outside with our maybe 10% approval rating, wondering what the heck are you doing back there in Washington, D.C., but we all know we're here for a good reason. So as I bring my piece to a close here, we have an obligation as dads to be there for our wives and for our kids. I mean, that's nothing new, but the dedication, they need to know that we're there for them, that we're fighting for something, whether it's our more day-to-day jobs, you know, if you're a butcher, a baker, a candlestick maker, or you're back here getting to be part of the U.S. Congress, that we're there for them. The importance of a dad to a son can't be overstated. You need a man in the life to guide your son to the right path, to be that strong voice, to keep your son in the position, first of all, of respecting your mother, respecting your sisters, respecting women, of what that role is supposed to be. They need that, and a lot of them have lost out on that. It's sad. We see the tragedy. Some of these kids walk in the streets and they grow up to be in gangs and so much because they didn't have that. A dad has a very strong role with his daughters to ensure that they know that they have value, that they aren't something to be out there to be traded, as so often happens when they didn't have that fatherly voice saying that you have value, you have self-respect that is so key to you and keeps so many times young girls out of trouble and on that good path. You can't overstate that role of a father on both sons and daughters. And, of course, that very strong support that's needed for your wife, who has to watch the home fires when we're off doing things like this. She needs that. And so what I'm saying to the men that are already fathers or would-be fathers, you got a very important task. Extremely, the most important task, to be that leader of your household. You need to stick with them through thick and thin. And men, be men. Don't be something else. Grow up. You need to cast off childish things when you've made that commitment to a woman and to fatherhood. Because they're watching you. Your neighborhood's watching you. It's the most important thing you'll ever do. So, Mr. Speaker, I conclude tonight with the thought that if we are to be one nation under God, men have a very key role in that, and that's being that father, and that's holding the family together. No matter what might come and affect it, no matter what legislation or court decision might try to affect or break that family union or make confusing decisions for our children, we have that role, and we can be that guide for their whole lives. And it's rewarding for all of us. So with that, I appreciate the time. Appreciate, Ms. Hartzler, your leading this discussion here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Very, very well said, and I appreciate you encouraging the men to be leaders of their household and to make a difference for their children and the next generation. You know, I appreciate all my colleagues who have come tonight so that we could talk about the importance of the fathers and how important it is to have marriage strong in our country. Every child deserves a mom and a dad, and you cannot say that fathers are essential while also making them optional. You know, the presence of a father has such a tremendous impact on the life of each and every child and on every adult in America. Fathers not only represent the success of our children, but also the success of our nation. And as we get closer to the Supreme Court rulings concerning the Defense of Marriage Act, it's crucial that we weigh the entirety of the impact such a decision will have on families. My colleague from Oklahoma earlier cited the President in this quote when he stressed the importance of fathers, and I think it's very, very good, and I want to repeat it. President Obama said, as fathers, we need to be involved in our children's lives, not just when it's convenient or easy, and not just when they're doing well, but when it's difficult and thankless and they're struggling. That is when they need us most. Every single child in this country deserves the opportunity to have a mother and a father. That's why we must uphold marriage. Not only must we represent the future of our children, they represent the future of our nation. So thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this time, and I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back. Pursuant to the Clause 12A of Rule 1, the Chair declares the House in recess subject to the call of the Chair.
Earlier today, by a vote of 228 to 196, members passed a bill that bans abortions after 20 weeks. The legislation imposes criminal penalties on medical professionals who violate the ban, but the bill provides exceptions if the life of the mother is in danger or in cases of rape or incest. The House also began work on the Farm Bill. That measure sets policies over 5 years for farm subsidies, crop insurance, and nutrition programs. We'll see amendment debate on that bill tomorrow, with over 200 filed on the bill. Follow the House live here on C-SPAN when members return on Wednesday.